This four-part series consists of interviews with researchers studying the Nazca bodies. These interviews have never been presented to an English-speaking audience before, providing details about their research and their professional backgrounds. These next interviews will be dubbed in English. Hola, Señor Mantilla. Thank you so much for joining us today. Before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about your background in journalism and how you got involved with this investigation?
I started in the communication world in 1990 and radio, all private stations, except for one time when I was at public radio when I was very young. After 5 years in radio, I moved on over to television, directly reporting news, and I had to cover a war with a neighboring country, Ecuador. I was involved in the treaties, and I was there when the peace was signed. I was in the war zone. I was almost in every Latin country covering news, disasters, hurricane, presidential meetings, and things like that. I've been in Antarctica doing scientific research, also alongside expeditions. I've also done a lot of work in politics, and I've seen the fall of these different types of brains, the reassurance of a democracy, and I've had the opportunity to speak with several presidents, with Hugo Chavez, the president of Venezuela, and we've discussed face-to-face with Hugo Chavez, and I've accused him of hiding Fujimori's corrupt advisor in his country, which of course he denied. A few months passed, and Vladimir Montesinos fell in Venezuela, protected by Hugo Chavez. And I've been through a lot in journalism. My things were mostly political, but since 2007, I've left television. I formed my own production company, and I had the freedom to handle the topics I wanted without any kind of censorship. In 2017, when the issue of the Nazca bodies began to appear on social media, I was dedicating myself to make communication for companies. The main brands of vehicles that were European, North American, and Asian trucks were my clients. I worked with them, did communication for them. We made programs and recordings that later appeared on major networks, like programs like Deadly Routes that appeared on History Channel, for example, or some other networks. And they were made with images that we produced in Peru with my production company. So I was on another path. Let's say I had stopped being a war pilot to become a commercial pilot. I was living very peacefully with very important clients. And we recognized within my field, and the issue of the Nazca bodies just began to appear. With all the doubt and disbelief that all journalists have from the beginning, I started looking for information and realized that there was something very strange about this.
How did you first connect with Jaime Maussan? I understand he was already working on this investigation when you reached out to him.
I saw a way to get closer. I sent a tweet to Jaime Maussan without knowing him. And since he was in Peru and there was no Peruvian on his team, I told him I can advise you because I have been to so many countries. I know the difference of arriving in a country where you don't know anyone, or the way of doing things, and how different it is when you arrive and someone is already waiting for you with the vehicle and has a whole plan set up. I offered him that without any kind of compensation in return. I said, I just want to be close to this investigation. It seems to me that there are many strange things, but it is enough that just one of those bodies is authentic. I think this could be groundbreaking. When he accepted me, I told him, hey, just in case, I'm going to report it if something is not right, if they want to cover something up, or something is said in a way that it is not, so I warn you from now on. Of course, Maussan told me all the freedom to write. And in fact, I have written my scripts, my documentaries, without any kind of consultation. And as a competing journalist, each one reporting in their own style, in their own way, and with what they saw, I have had all the freedom to write the way that the things are up until today and in the future. And that is why when the doubts that lead me to investigate were cleared, up by what came from the tomographies, from the x-rays, from what the forensic experts said, by what the biologists said, When a journalist who has only these testimonies, what is left for him to do? Well, that's to report and analyze that we are facing a unique event in history.
You've described this discovery as the most important in history. Can you explain why you believe these findings are so significant and what they might mean for our understanding of human history?
Truly, it's being in front of a being of a tridactyl hominid species. That's an historical fact, and not because I say so, but because the evidence points to the fact that we are facing the most important discovery in history. I have said this in other interviews. 10 or 50 generations of journalists before me, or 20 or 30 generations after mine, would like to have been before their eyes the possibility of investigating something like this, and it's not going to happen to them. It will hardly be their turn to have a case like this of the worldwide magnitude and significance that this discovery has. It is a privilege and a great responsibility because let's forget about my credibility or my history or everything that I've done in journalism. It could be burned if these were false. And, I thought about this from the very beginning. This has brought me more problems than benefits. However, we continue with this because it is almost like a cause that seems fair to me, that this discovery can be recognized as valid to continue to be investigated. What we want is for this investigation through the Peruvian government to be open to the best in the world. For the Peruvian government to give them permission to come to the University of Inca, where several of these bodies are, so that the best in the world can investigate them, to take the necessary samples and take them to the most important laboratories, because there is a discovery here that is unique, that is transcendental, that breaks with everything known, and cannot be treated by the government of my country, by the submissive governments that we have had in the last 7 years, as a lie.
I'm aware that you have created a presentation for us. I'm ready when you are.
That's right. Now I'm going to share some images in a short presentation. I think they prefer to see these beauties instead of my face. When we saw Maria, who is this spectacular tridactyl being, the truth is that most of us were left with their mouths open. I would have loved to have a second camera just to see and take a picture of the faces that saw Maria. Their mouths were open and their faces of disbelief at the spectacle of seeing a being of a species so similar to us, but with so many differences that it take out of what we can consider kind of human. Now, the dentition, its physical characteristics, those hands with those 3 long fingers definitely stand out as not so human, right? Then at the end of 2023, meeting these beings also that have very similar characteristics, but not longer so far from humans. Like they don't differ that far away from humans. And these are more like a child who could be running through a park. Of course, it does have different physical characteristics. It's also tridactyl, and all the studies that we have been shown that have been done. And those evidence of tomographies have been shown publicly through the journalistic investigation that we are doing on, the parts, on your part of what Jaime Maussan has done as well. They make us see that this is a child of a different species. Now, if you notice, the eyes are angled at almost 45 degrees. It does not have eyes like all humans have. Now, each animal, they have horizontal eyes, and there are no animals that have eyes like that, not even the oriental ones that have the slanted eyes. It is only a small feature. They do not have the 45-degree oblique angle of the eyes like this being, and this cannot be manipulated. Here you can see that white covering that they have that has been the preservation with these, and they have kept the complete internal organs of this being up until today. It's the most extraordinary discovery. This could not be said to be a doll created with animal bones. Now, any researcher, look, let's start with something very simple, Christina. There are already professors and researchers. Look at the fingerprints they have. They are linear. This does not exist in hominids, not even in monkeys. It is totally different from any type of fingerprint that has been seen before in similar human beings or just in humans altogether. Now look at the dentition as it has been manipulated too. Of course, the dentition can be maintained, but look at this extremities that it has. Any serious professional alone, there in his office or in front of his x-ray equipment, can see those tomographies and rule out that there is any manipulation or that the end of the fingers have been artificially cut to make them look like what they are not. Now, we are seeing clearly, this is Sebastian, who is spectacular. He's a young man of approximately 10 to 14 years old who has an enormous head, and it has not been artificially deformed with bandages or splints or anything like that. And look at the eyes he has. It also has an extreme angulation at 45 degrees. There is no human being on the planet, no monkey that has an eye like that. It's a different species. It's also a tridactyl, and you can also see some implants within the skin. Now, the implant that he has in the nape of his neck coincides with a large lesion that he has in the cervical. Look at what we found on the edges of the eye. It looks like a suture with which they tried to close his eyelids. This could be the equivalent of a modern medical suture that was already done in the past. And look at the implant on the back of his neck. It even has an inscription upside down on it, and this can be seen clearly. Those hands are unique. There's no evidence of staples, metal, or any way of joining the bones. And as scientists who do science from their desks have unfortunately wanted to say, sitting somewhere in their house with their cell phones in their hands, that, hey, this was all put together and it's fake. But they are not going to do the science, they're not going to do the research. Even living in Peru, there are scientists. Scientists have come from Mexico, from the US, from different countries, even from Russia, to do what these other scientists sitting at their desks didn't want to do and instead just criticized. This, for me, was what we called in April of this year the definitive proof. This is Montserrat, a tridactyl being. Also, you can see her nails are preserved, same with her fingers. And look at the extremities on her hand. The hand has not been trimmed, nor have any bones been increased. There is no sign of manipulation, according to 4 forensic experts who have analyzed it. Radiologists have analyzed it. Anatomists have analyzed it. Traumatologists, experts from different professions and trades, who note that these are completely original hands. They have not been manipulated in any way.
You've faced quite a bit of skepticism and pushback from the scientific community. What has been your experience dealing with these criticisms, and why do you think there's such resistance to investigating these findings?
Well, the difficulties have arisen since the scientific community tried to silence this case. They've tried to vilify it. They've tried to falsify the evidence. It's something that puts them in check. From the beginning, without evidence, without any analysis, they've exposed themselves to worldwide ridicule by saying that these beings are similar to us, where humans have been manipulated for commercial purposes, to make documentaries, to stage a show and shock the public. But what's happening? More and more professionals, the list now exceeds about 50 professionals, have participated in this investigation and have done some kind of research on these bodies. And they revealed that these tridactyls, these three-fingered beings, are original. Nothing similar exists in the world. And look at that implant on the forehead. The metal has interacted with the surrounding skin, and there's physical evidence of this. They can't simply deny what's there. That's the moment that we detected that she was pregnant with a closed cervix. And here's the head, the cervical spine, the spine, and Dr. David Rees, you interviewed him, of course. He and the radiologist detected the evidence of a tiny being, just a few centimeters. He's Raphael. Here's his head. This is his spine. And here you can see one little leg and the other also bent. And right here, it's very strange. And that's the femur. And there are the bones in the lower part. This is the head, of course. And this is a 3D reconstruction. We don't have to open the money to take out the fetus and show that it is a fetus. You can see it using technology. Of course, there may be much more powerful CT scanners, but this is already a base, a foundation that we have. And this can't be faked, Cristina. And I tell the public this too. There is no way to fake something like this. Do you think somebody could be capable of opening a pregnant human mummy, manipulating its fingers to make it tridactyl, and leaving no evidence? That's impossible. This is surprising because also using artificial intelligence, we've clarified the details and have been able to see how, while it's a tridactyl hand, the fetus is also tridactyl like the mother. How do you do something like this, you scientific geniuses? How do you do this, for God's sakes? The thing is, it's so mind-numbing. They're going to be worth half or much less because they've already gone ahead and trashed, belittled, and tried to denigrate and hide one of the most important discoveries in history. They're the ones who should have set the record straight from the start, approached the investigation, and arrived at it like I did, like many others have, with doubts, with suspicions. But they investigated it and done what we're doing and producing the results. That's what they should have done, not written little letters or ridiculous documents speaking out against the attack on human mummies, manipulating them to make documentaries like this. And now, why do you think they want to cover this up? That's why they're reburying all these mummies. Why they are reburying them once and for all, to get rid of the sword they have been hanging over at their heads. Because I don't know when this was really becoming a little bigger. This has already been talked about everywhere, not at a mass level, because the media has made sure that this remains on the margins of the population. But this is already growing in a way that, how can I put it? It's already gone a little out of control. Look, here are Santiago's footprints. The linear footprints I was telling you about. No type of hominid has them. And why do we say hominid? Because they're very similar to us. We belong to the hominid group. We are finding in these beings that they have been, that there have been tridactyl hominids. So what's the origin of these? Well, we don't know. How did they appear and leave nothing behind? We also don't know, which is why we want to investigate, which is why some people at the congressional hearing are calling us crazy, like we've done something crazy. Why are they going to Congress? It's a waste of time. These footprints have made the news in many countries around the world, in Japan, in the UK, in the United States, and here in Peru. Cristina, do you think they've appeared, if you will, a line, a tiny photo at the bottom of a newspaper or in the miscellaneous section? How crazy is the world? There has been nothing.
You've mentioned that despite the international attention, the coverage in Peru has been minimal. Why do you think local media has been resistant to cover these findings?
It's appeared in science papers just to talk about preservation, that white color that some ignorant people say is plaster with which they have made up the mummy so that it's not visible what they have cut out of it, right? Only the desiccation could be the subject of a researcher's thesis, and that would be a goal, a tremendous goal, to talk only about the preservation that these desiccated beings have maintained for more than 1,500 years at least in this diatomaceous earth. From this fleet that millions of years ago were microscopic algae that lived in the sea, this has been mixed together with the cadmium chloride that is in the formula, and it is a totally toxic substance, lethal to humans. But those who desiccated these bodies, impregnated the skin before applying them in the diatomaceous earth, they applied the cadmium chloride as an abrasive, like the substance to which the diatomaceous earth stuck to it. And that is why it doesn't fall off so easily. This is what they have maintained in the preserved bodies. Now, in some of these small bodies, they have been highly questioned for their size, their shape, and because they resemble science fiction aliens. And inside these eggs, it has been found that it has organic material. They're not stones, they're not metals, or not crystal balls or anything like that. They are gestation eggs. Now, some geniuses have said, but there can be nothing more solid than bone because they look so white. And they're right. There can be nothing in a living being that can be harder than bone. Here, these eggs look more solid, right? Because with desiccation, something very interesting has happened. The eggs have lost moisture. They have lost water and have become increasingly solid, and the bones have been losing calcium over time and becoming a little more transparent. That explains why the gestation eggs look more solid, apparently. Well, they look more solid than bones, and the question is, why? Because it has been an inverse process. While the bones have been decalcifying, the eggs have lost moisture and have become more solid, more rigid, harder. It's not only the professionals from the university who did not stop there. And what they did was tomography, and also the Inkari Institute, which was the pioneer in the discovery, the first to announce this extraordinary discovery. They did their tomography and look at those from the Inkari Institute and what they discovered. That inside it is obviously not stone, but inside it's an organic form that can be from a fetus. Now, look at what you see here. When you remove the organic layers, you're left with this. The professors from the University of Ica also did their own tomography, and what you see here is the head of the little being. Here you see the arms extended a little forward, and this is the rest of the body. They are tomography scans. They are not 3D animations. And here, Montserrat, as I showed you a little while ago, has in the internal part of her body also a little baby that we have named Raphael. I think there are many things that make this discovery more worth than continuing the investigation, opening a much deeper investigation with the most qualified professionals that exist in the world. Science is the one that has the floor in this. However, we have to see that with some ritual pieces, with some little dolls, they have wanted to disable the discovery.
You've mentioned that critics have tried to discredit the investigation by comparing the real specimens to fake artifacts. Can you go into more detail on that?
Sure, there are pieces that were sent to the office, to the public ministry, and look, they send them by mail to the office, and they use this to say that everything we're investigating is false. When you have no origin, nor the same shape, nor do they have almost anything in common, except the attempt to look like one of the real bodies, that were 60 centimeters. Now look at the feet of this mummy simulation, and look at the feet of the crow that was found near the Nazca lines. Look at the comparison on the hands. Here, they have made 3 little lines above the finish. And look, compare to it with the hands. Even the forensics have found the tensor tendons that make us able to make the fingers point downward. That is why the little finger arches, because the muscles have tensed and has made the finger go downward. That cannot be falsified either. Compare it also. Look at the part of the head. This kind of head, and look at the shape that it has. Totally different. And there is a harmony between the head, the neck, the thorax, and there are no frames. These are not heads of anything that we know. And this is part of the study that another group of professors have been doing. Because behind all of this, Cristina and your audience, I want to tell you that there are not only journalists or independent researchers, there are study groups already from 4 universities in Peru. 4 universities that are looking into this. Do you think that professors from 3 public universities, some of the most important in Peru, and a study group of professors from a private university in Cusco are going to be playing with dolls, risking their career, their prestige, even being made fun of by their own students, are fired from their job? Because they know that students can protest and complain about the teachers that they obviously have, and they could lose their jobs. They are making scientific publications about this discovery. They have worked on all of this. They are working on the size of the skulls, on the dimensions that they have. And this skull this one we're seeing right here is original. Nobody has modified it and molded it to give it that appearance. And look at the thickness of the skull. And look at this. This is the skull of a conventional human, like you and me. And in some parts, it is double or triple the thickness of a normal human skull. And besides size, the brain capacity of a human is, in relation to the face and the skull, is 1-to-1. And Maria is 1-to-3. That is 30% more brain capacity. Maria could have been smarter than us.
The DNA analysis you've mentioned is particularly fascinating. What do we know about the genetic makeup of these beings so far?
Yeah, that is the culminating part of the DNA study, of the bioinformatics study that Maria did, which has something impossible for current science. Now, putting it together to all the money from Bill Gates, from Elon Musk, from all over the world, he could not put together the DNA of these 2 individuals, of a human, of a bonobo in transformation. Now, add these 3 and add a 4th element, an unknown DNA in genetic libraries. And all of these 4 DNAs give you Maria, a hybrid being. Now let a scientist, a geneticist, explain this to me. How could this have been done 1,800, 2,000 years ago when we can't even do it now? Anyways, there's a lot. This is what scientists have been doing before, filling their mouths with lies and fallacies. Now go to the place, investigate, as John Van Gogh's team did, or Rodriguez, or Salsic, who came to the University of Ica, and they were on their own teams, and they began to transparently and altogether see Maria's joints. That's what a scientist does. Not write little letters, not complain, not talking about manipulation, not talking about commercial ends or manipulation of a human mummy to take away its dignity and everything and show off. They did the research. Now look at these limbs right here. Totally harmonious. They look at the separation between each finger. Now to a greater extent, because obviously they have to compensate. You and I have 5 fingers. They have 3. And in that way, as the forensic science experts explain, that separation cannot be balanced either, and the separation of the fingers is to maintain support and to be able to stand as well. Now here, we were doing the live broadcast for the conference that was held in Los Angeles with Dr. David Rees. The tomography scans were taken in front of the doctors and forensic experts, and they were analyzed live. It could be seen that there were no signs of manipulation. Not all beings are original, that the bodies are in the form and lived in that form as well, and there's no type of, well, that was at the end of March of last year, and a dozen cameras were there, and nothing came on television. But we're about to turn that around this year.
What has been the official government response to these bodies? You've mentioned that the Ministry of Culture held a press conference not too long ago.
Yeah, I did. On January 12th will mark a year since that pompous press conference that the Ministry of Culture held, with some officials saying, this is all fake and blah, blah, blah. And they grabbed some dummies that they confiscated at the airport and used them to say that everything that we are investigating, what is at the university, is the same as these dolls that were found at the airport. And it makes no sense to say that they would have had to have gone to the university, studied the bodies that there are, and that they show the results of all the things that we found. But no, instead of going to the university, they prefer to receive what has been sent to them. In this case, the confiscated handicrafts from the airports, and then they played with them in the conference. That's why I jokingly call them doll experts, because they're experts in dolls. They analyze dolls. We and my team analyzes desiccated bodies. That's why when they say that they found rubber and chicken bones and plant fibers, they're right, because that is what they find in those analyzed dolls, right? Now, if they go to the university, they will find tridactyl hybrid DNA. They will find original tridactyl beings. They will find skin with a totally different texture, with a totally different structure than ours. And they will find just totally different things. They will not find staples. They won't find glue. They'll find nothing like that. Now, obviously, if they dedicated themselves to studying handicraft, to investigate handicraft, that is what they will find. There are indications and vestiges of tridactyls since ancient times.
You've collected quite a bit of historical evidence showing tridactyl beings in ancient art and artifacts from around the world. Tell us about some of these examples.
Absolutely. This figure here, for example, is found in Iraq about 600 years ago, and the shape of the head is very similar to that of Maria. Now, here's another body also from the Nazca, and here is a cave painting that was about 11,000 years old as well. Now, this was found in Balbas near Nazca. This is also a tridactyl. Now, look at this photo, and I went ahead and I digitally enhanced it. And it was found in the Andes of Peru. Also, another tridactyl was found in Mexico, another one in Pilares of Peru. And these are tridactyl beings. And here, there's a tiny tridactyl inside too. I mean, look at this large one, and then look at this tiny one. In different areas of Peru, there are these types of tridactyl weavings and textiles. And it is not that they do not know how to weave 5 fingers, but the beings they saw had these shapes, like this type of shaped head, eyes that were almost half the size of their face, and they had 3 fingers. It was not on a whim. It was not an inability. Even there are tridactyls in these vases on looms. We have found them in Chile. And look here. There are tridactyls in California, in Australia, about 47,000 years ago. And look at the shape of the head. The shape of the cap of the Nazca beings. There are many vestiges of tridactyl beings in different parts. even in the exhibition of the Ministry of Culture of the Peruvian government, they exhibited dolls made of rags, with fabrics, with textiles, and the dolls also have 3 fingers and very long 3 toes. Now, look, it's not a coincidence. This is an official exhibition at the Museum of Art in Lima. The fingers are there too, 3 long toes, because they lacked fabric. They lacked wool to weave. What? No, sir. They were drawing. They were creating a doll that represents what they saw. Beings, tridactyls that have also been seen in Argentina, in Venezuela, in Cuba. And this is very interesting stone that they found in Peru, which has a sculpted stone that apparently has the crossing of 2 species, a hand with 5 fingers and one with 3. These filaments here could allude to DNA. These 3 objects coincide with the position of the Orion's belt, and it could be the origin, it could be some kind of symbol of hybridization or coexistence. I don't know, but this was found in the archaeological site in Ambo. And Ambo is in the center of the Andes of Peru. And well, this is the most recent thing we found, what we have access to. And we didn't find, I haven't found anything. I only report what others have found. And stones have been found that have these enlargements, which could be diatomaceous earth. Now, I'll explain. The whitish thing in the diatomaceous earth, that also covers the bodies. But part of the surface has been cleaned so that the symbols there can be defined. But the diatomaceous earth is also of those stones. Or could it be a form of communication? Well, it's very likely. The support of linguists and experts is needed who can help with this, because we know that they have been part of the context of the discovery or the environment of the mountains. Recently also, as if Peru needed more reasons to be visited, thanks to artificial intelligence and thanks to the Yamagata University, they found 303 new figures in Nazca. These incredible figures, beings that are very strange, that you can be seen in and around the Nazca lines.
Thank you, Jois, for taking the time to be on the show today. Where can people find you online?
Thank you so much for having me on, Cristina. They can find me anywhere at Jois Mantilla.
Jois, gracias.
Thank you, Cristina.
If you enjoyed the show, hit that like button right down below, and you can find all the written articles to these interviews on my website at ufonews.co. That link will be in the description box below. And if you enjoy space ambient music, check out my music channel at Other Worlds Ambient Music on YouTube. It helps aid sleep and relaxation. That link will also be found below. That's it for today. I will see you next time. Be safe, and remember, keep your eyes on the skies. If you enjoy the strange and the mysterious, UFOs, the paranormal, and cryptids, this channel is for you. So make sure to subscribe, as I do 3 videos right here every single week, and hit that notification bell so you do not miss any of the bonus content I post right here.